everyone, I'm Rosie Finn. I'm an astrologer in Olympia, Washington, and today I'm going to talk about the transits of the first half of 2025 and a little bit of a sense of the transits over the next 10 years and a rhythm that's playing out that will be really supportive of us for us to know and understand and align with as we go forward through a time that is a, a pivotal time in history. It's a time of revolution, a time of reformation. It's a time when people rise up. And this rising up begins with some ideas that happen in the spring, some insights we can get in the spring, and then it kind of full blown arises in September of 2025. So, welcome to my talk, and thanks for being here. So first, let me go through the outer planet ingresses, which just is a fancy word for a planet changing signs. And the outer planets are Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. These three planets are all invisible. They're beyond what we can see with the naked eye. And when a planet is invisible or can't be seen, we're experiencing the shadow of it. When that's for those planets, we experience the transitions and the events that correlate with them on in a way that is hard to be. It's not tangible. It's a sense that something is happening, but we can't always put our finger on it. We can feel it. We can sense it. The more conscious we are, the more tuned in we are to outer planet transits. But often it requires an inner planet to trigger it. So we're going to talk about triggers and what they are and when they are and how they occur. But first, let's look at the signs that the outer planets are in. Pluto has just moved into Aquarius, November 19th of 2024. It will be there until 2044. Pluto was in Capricorn from 2008 to 2024, and Capricorn is a sign that's connected to structures, organizations, the economy, government. It's connected to the things that we hold as secure. So housing, and that particularly the housing market. So in 2008, when Pluto moved into Capricorn, it immediately started to transform the housing market. Now, for most of us that are, not wealthy landlords on the planet, this has been a very difficult transition. Pluto has been asking us to really look at what makes us feel secure. And it does it through taking it away. It does it through transforming it it does it through destruction, really. So Pluto immediately came in 2008 and destroyed the housing market, and it hasn't really recovered. We have the appearance of some recovery. Really, what we have is a whole new system that is connected to how we set up the structures and live in our homes. And for places that were able to adjust, align, grieve, look at the issues. There's been more low-income housing, at least in Olympia and in other places. There's been people willing to address it. We've had a slew of new kinds of homes arising, $10,000 container homes that you can buy off of Amazon. A friend of mine is an architect who designed like a pop-up home that you can buy. We have a sense even that the very structures that we live in are not as permanent as we once thought they were. And this idea that the housing market could never, ever crumble is also, nobody believes that anymore. We know that there's insecurity in how we physically live on the planet. And that's what Pluto in Capricorn was here to teach us. Not in necessarily a negative way, but it's here to teach us that there's a different kind of security in us, and it's within that the true security, that the true essence of us being here on this planet isn't about getting more things or having security even. It's about living true to ourselves. And the more we've developed that over the last since 2008, however many years that is, I can't do math in my head on the fly. However many years it's been, we've been learning about what really brings us true security, what really brings us true organization. We've had a lot of focus on organization over the last 10, 15 years. New programs teaching us how to organize. We've had the whole clean, organized design, what sparks joy. We've been doing a lot. Uh, there's been a lot of movement around getting off of corporate buying things from big corporations. There's also been a downsizing movement. How do we get rid of things, clear things? This is a value that wasn't really happening in 2006, 2007. And since that time period, the pandemic was part of it. We were all about clearing, getting rid of things. There's more ways to do that now. So Pluto in Aquarius is about the new age of Aquarius. How do we collaborate together? How do we get along? How do we co-create things? And the first thing it's going to do is show us all the ways that we're not co-creating. It's going to show us where we're not collaborating, getting along, cooperating. The end result of Pluto in Aquarius is to show us how to live in a different kind of world. Pluto in Capricorn, Capricorn rules the old, it rules the patriarchate, it rules tradition. Aquarius rules what's new, what's possible. Let's break free. Let's open the doors. So Pluto now, it moved into Aquarius after the election. And since it's been in Aquarius, there's been a lot of regime changes. There's been a whole change in the Middle East and Syria. There's the US being in a process of a new administration, countries in Europe being in process of new administrations. There's something that's wanting to happen that's what's new? Can we open to it? And when we cling to what's old, we're clinging kind of to Pluto and Capricorn, which it is no longer there. Neptune moves into Aries in January 2026, although it taps in to Aries in the spring of 2025. So that's why we're going to focus on some new things happening in 2025. Neptune's been in Pisces since 2012. It's been all about the vigilante. Neptune in Pisces likes to look at religion, spirituality, but also what we're devoted to, what we give over our lives to. So the devotional aspects of life have been put under a microscope since 2012. We're looking at religion and the issues within religions and the issues within our spirituality and drugs and alcohol, and Neptune rules all of that. So all the changes, the legalization of some substances, also I think many more people are on antidepressants and on pharmaceuticals. I think a lot of that has to do with Neptune in Pisces. Neptune in Aries is the beginning of a whole new cycle. There's a sense of something new beginning. Again, it's about breaking free, just kind of like Pluto in Aquarius. What else is possible besides the old stories that we've had for thousands of years? The Piscean age. Neptune rules Pisces. Neptune in Pisces over the last decade has been kind of almost like the old idea of the Piscean age going on steroids. So now it's not here yet. So it's not, Neptune will tap into Aries on March 30th, right the day after an eclipse. And it will feel like something new is starting. And then Uranus moves into Gemini, roughly same timing. We'll get a little bit of a hit of Uranus and Gemini over the summer of 2025, and then in April 2026, it moves into Gemini. Now, Uranus is in a sign for 7 years, and so Uranus and Gemini will also be a boost to new technologies, not necessarily based on computers or based on Wi-Fi or AI, but something could be radically and dramatically new. Uranus, when it's transitioning from Taurus to Gemini, this is a particularly special area of the sky, which is where the constellation or where the stars of the Pleiades are, the seven sisters. And the seven sisters and the Pleiades are about how do we cooperate together? How do we live together? How do we love each other? How do we share resources? The Pleiades have always been teachers of that. You look at all the channeled materials of the Pleiades, and they're about emotional awareness, connection to us, connection to the earth, a very symbiotic relationship between the stars and this planet. How do we bring heaven on earth? That's what the Pleiades message is. And then Saturn also moves into Aries. It will tap in again, the spring 2025, summer 2025. It'll move back into Pisces in the fall, and then February 14th, 2026 to April 2028, Saturn is in Aries. And now Saturn has a little bit of light to it. It's the dimmest of the visible planets, but it will trigger Neptune, the invisible planet. So Saturn is going to help us understand what Neptune's been about and is going to be about. I mean, Aries is all about what's going forward. What are we creating? What's the new thing? It's about pioneering things, starting something brand new. It's the spark of the revolution. All right, so one thing that I've been tracking for years, so forgive me as I go through this again, is Pluto declination. Declination is how far above or below the equatorial plane a planet is. And Pluto, this is the declination cycle. I'm tracking 1863 to 2010. It's 2110. This is a full Pluto cycle, which is about 247 and a half years roughly. And what I'm focusing on is Pluto in extreme declination when it goes past 23 and a half degrees. And when Pluto goes into extreme declination, it exhibits its worst behavior. It gets to be on steroids. It's like Pluto gets to be unleashed. It gets to do whatever it wants. And Pluto is the god of the underworld. We know that he abducted and raped Persephone. We know that he is an abuser. He is a neglectful God. He rules kind of the dark side of things. And when he gets to be unleashed, that's when we have dictators and rulers unleashed. But we also have revolution unleashed and reformation and people rising up. So in the cycle, this cycle began in 1863. It begins with visionaries, then it moves out of bounds. It moved out of bounds in the 1940s during World War II. Then we have another time when Pluto's at 0 degrees declination. This is kind of I call it the justice time. It's when there's a cry for justice. There starts to be people really looking at the emperor has no clothes, the emperor, the empire building happening in the 1940s. And then the empires collapse when Pluto goes out of bounds for the second time in a cycle. And these are the dates for when Pluto goes out of bounds for the second time in this Pluto cycle, where it goes out of bounds to the south, which is a really different thing than when Pluto goes out of bounds to the north. So when Pluto went out of bounds to the north, that was the 1940s. That was massive empire building. It was also massive destruction, many deaths, genocide, horrible things, atomic bombs, Pluto unleashed. So Pluto's about to be unleashed again, and he's fierce. The crazy thing about this is the last time Pluto's going to be unleashed for at least a few thousand years. So check out these dates. One of the things you might notice about these dates is that Pluto, when it gets out of bounds, it doesn't go out of bounds for an entire year. Last time it was out of bounds, late 1700s, it was out of bounds for years in a row. And this time, Pluto won't be out of bounds for even an entire year. So when we're looking at this, there's a rhythm to all of the years going forward, the next 10 years, where in the fall, the first one, September 11th to November 9th, 2025, Pluto goes out of bounds. We have this time of destruction, of really profound change, of collapse, of things falling apart, but also this chance for awakening, for paradigm shifts, for all kinds of things to kind of change. The next year, 2026, August to December, and you can see August to December is the main time that Pluto is going out of bounds. When we get to 2034, it's down to 2 months again, 1 month about, and then 2036, it's not out of bounds. The peak is 2030, although the hardest times of any planetary transit is the beginning, because we're having to deal with something new, something we're not ready for, something we didn't even know was going to happen. And that's what begins in 2025, 2026. So as we go through the next 10 years, I want us to be thinking about a rhythm to the year where from about August 2nd, that's the Wiccan Holy Day of Lammas, till about the equinox, no, I'm sorry, the solstice, the winter solstice, that there's this time period, and maybe even think about all the way to February, because I think there's a fallout period afterwards. So I'm feeling that from August 2nd to February 2nd is more the time of destruction. And from February 2nd to August 2nd every year, so spring, summer months, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, reverse if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, those months are more the creative times, the times to build something, to move something new into the world, to launch your book, your project, your business, collaborate, cooperate, create new groups, create the revolution in the way that we want it to be. It doesn't have to be bloody or violent. There's all different kinds of ways that we can create a revolution. We could be singing, we could be out there with our kazoos, we could be out there with dancing and art and creativity and growing food together and homesteading or supporting each other in different ways. So we're going to watch for these months to know that these are more likely the times for an uprising. Okay. So this is focused on the flow of next year, 2025. So right now, Mars is in retrograde. Now, Mars, when it's retrograde, any planet retrograde becomes brighter. So it becomes more of a trigger planet. So when Mars is retrograde, it's a bigger trigger. And what's it triggering? It's moving opposite Pluto. So just as Pluto moves into Aquarius, where we're like, I mean, Pluto's tapped into Aquarius last year. So we've had a little bit of a sense of Aquarius. But right now, we're getting a message from Mars about what Pluto and Aquarius is going to be. Now, Mars is not the friendliest of planets as a trigger. It tends to trigger violence. So on December 5th, that was when the Syrian uprising and the ousting of the dictator in Syria happened December 5th, December 6th, right in that time period. That regime, the al-Assad regime, the chart for that had Mars at 5 degrees Leo, right where Mars was stationing. So we can see a direct correlation between the Syrian chart for that dynasty and that Mars retrograde. So Mars can be a violent overthrow, but just like with Syria, when it's happening, it's quick, it's intense, it's decisive, it shifts things. And now that Pluto is permanently in Aquarius, at least for the next 20 years, we're processing, digesting, accepting that there is a new age, that this is a new time, that we are not, things are not the same as they were. This is not the same Trump presidency. This is not the same Arab Spring. This is different. So Mars retrograde, I'm suggesting that until February 24th, we kind of lay low, unless it's, your particular calling to step into it. But I don't think the triggers for this are going to be particularly advantageous for us to start a new movement, for us to start the revolution that would be peaceful and harmonious. This is more likely a time of revolutions that start with violence. Mars likes the violence. It's not actually a particularly violent god in the pantheons of Greek gods. It's more the planet and the god that says, charge. He's the one that gets everybody else riled up. He's the one that instigates change. So I think we want to work with the Mars energy within ourselves. Take this time to clear a lot of things out of your house, do some deep cleaning, look at your life from a different perspective, get a little time out, look at think about what's possible, scrap the old ideas, scrap all the things you were told. Let Mars help help us to dismantle the constellations in our minds and in our bodies that have brought fear or anxiety. Let's look at what those triggers are and let's question them really deeply. All right. So then Mars goes direct February 24th. It will still be opposing Pluto all through the spring. But when it's direct and opposing Pluto, it's more likely the new insights. And that, connected to the other things happening, gives me a lot of excitement about what's going to go on March, April, May, June, July of next year. I think we're going to have brand new ideas for how to deal with things, for how to change things that have been ongoing wars. I think there's just some interesting ideas that we're going to have. So Venus retrograde starts March 2nd to April 13th. Now, there's just something so magical about this Venus retrograde. Venus, when it's brighter, it also acts like a trigger. I mean, all the inner planets, Venus, Mars, Mercury, even Sun, Moon, they all act like triggers when they're conjunct or opposing or squaring an outer planet. So Venus is going to go back and forth, conjuncting Neptune as Neptune is moving into Aries. So we have Mars opposing Pluto as Pluto moves into Aquarius. We have Venus triggering Neptune. The synchronicity of this is really extraordinary, I have to tell you, because one of the concepts in astrology is that there are octaves. So there's the lower octave, which is the more personal planets. And then there's the higher octave, which is the planets that are connected to the collective. And so Mars is the lower octave of Pluto. Mars rules personal will, our ability to determine our direction in life. And Pluto rules the evolutionary will. What's the deeper process of the will force of humanity? Where is that going? And then Venus is the lower octave of Neptune. Venus is about how we fall in love, how we create, how we feel passionate about, how we magnetize things to ourselves, how we love someone, like in that way where I'm in love with you. That's Venus. Neptune is the planet of divine love, of I love everyone. It's like true and deep compassion. It's the feeling of unity consciousness. So Venus is going to retrograde conjunct Neptune. Again, like this is really pretty synchronous to that Mars would be triggering its higher octave, and then Venus is going to trigger its higher octave. And Mars and Pluto, really intense, more on the destructive side as far as planets. They're considered malefics. Venus and Neptune are benefics. These are sacred planets. Mars and Pluto in the esoteric realm, these are non-sacred planets. These are planets that haven't evolved into unity consciousness. But Venus and Neptune in our solar system are considered sacred planets. And so Venus is going to go retrograde. It's going to be really very close to Neptune. It's going to go back into Pisces, but it's going to start its retrograde at 10 degrees Aries. And that will be March 2nd. And as you can see, there's a solar eclipse on March 29th at 9 degrees Aries. So this degree, 9-10 degrees Aries, is getting triggered by the Venus stationing and by the solar eclipse. And then if you look at the next line, Mercury retrograde on March 15th will also be stationing at 10 degrees Aries. Now, it's not so extraordinary that they're all happening in Aries, but the precision of the degrees is extraordinary. And so we have three major things triggering around 9-10 degrees Aries. And then Venus will retrograde back to 25 degrees Pisces, which is very close to 23 degrees Pisces, where the lunar eclipse on March 14th is. And then Mercury will retrograde back to 27 degrees Pisces, which is also still close enough to that lunar eclipse on the 14th at 23 Pisces. So we have this extraordinary time from March 2nd to April 13th, which also coincides with pretty much the exact time period of the eclipse energy. So with eclipses, we like to see 2 weeks before, 2 weeks after. So 2 weeks before March 14th is about March 1st, February, end of February. So that's beginning the eclipse time period, and the finality of the eclipse time period ends with the full moon on April 13th. So right as all of that's happening, Venus is going to station go direct on that full moon, and there's just something so magical. At the same time, Neptune will move into Aries March 30th. So Saturn will still be in Pisces, but these transits, Venus, the eclipses, Mercury, they will also be going over back and forth over Saturn, because Saturn will be towards the end of Pisces during this time period. But mostly Venus is eclipsing or connecting to Neptune. This is very exciting. This is new ideas. This is something brand new. The synchronicity of that 6-week time period, I think, is extraordinary and very exciting, particularly because Neptune moving into Aries is also just the beginning of a new cycle. The Aries point in Uranian astrology, the Aries point is considered a very important point. It's anything at 0 degrees Aries or Cancer or Libra or Capricorn. Any 0 degrees, give or take 1 degree. And this is our connection to the world. And when all of these outer planets are there by transit, all of us have this connection to the world. We're not left out. We're not all alone or by ourselves. It's a strong connection point. Okay. All right. And then just to go over some of these dates, Neptune will move back into Pisces October 22nd. Saturn will move back into Pisces September 1st. Uranus will move back into Taurus November 9th. And we'll have this winter time period of 2025 when Pluto goes out of bounds. And there's a window of time when these planets are moving back into Earth water signs, and Pluto will be out of bounds. So that time period, we'll just say starting September 1st, when Saturn moves back into Pisces, that's kind of the first domino, and then Pluto goes out of bounds the 11th. That winter time, it's a little bit of time to, again, watch and see what's going on, what's toppling, what's coming down. That would be a time to be maybe in a more protective space for ourselves. So go out in the world, create new things. I mean, the summer's great. Everything's moving forward. We don't have eclipses. I didn't just ignore the summer. It's just that all the planets are moving forward. So it's a great time to make things happen. Now, I will say that it's a great thing for people with good intentions to make things happen. It's also a good time for people with bad intentions to make things happen. So if it's a good time to make things happen, it's just a good time to make things happen. But take advantage of it, because people with bad intentions, they know this crap. They're doing it. So let's do it. Let's do and create the things that we want to create. Let's use this energy to our benefit. And I'm not saying it's causing it, it's correlation. I have no idea what makes all this happen. But that sense of moving forward, instead of trying to make everything happen right now, take a step back, December, January, watch and see. And any kind of suggestions or movements that are about staying home or boycotting or taking news breaks or not tuning into anything for 5 days around the inauguration, that's a good thing to do. Anybody who's like, let's get out in the streets right now, you can almost feel like it's just not time. And, by the way, I'm not even seeing that many people say it because it's just not time. We have to see what's actually going to pan out. All right, let's see. All right, this is the declination slide. I've shown this before. This is just showing that Pluto is going into going out of bounds, extreme declination, past the red line for one more time. Here's where we are now. This is the next time. It doesn't like really breach that. It may look like it does, but it doesn't. And then onward. And Pluto doesn't even touch it, which means Pluto doesn't get unleashed. The whole mythology about Pluto itself, what's our mythology? What do we believe in? We've been holding this old Greek stuff for a really long time. Maybe we can just completely get rid of the whole Pluto myth itself. Let's do away with the whole abduction theme. This could be the end of it. It'll probably take the whole 10 years, but we could see radical change. Here's another slide for those of you who just like to see it in a table format, the transits that are coming up. But I think I've mostly covered them. Let's just see if there's anything here. I've highlighted the synchronicity of the 9 degrees Aries, 24 degrees Pisces, how it very kind of neatly goes back and forth over that Aries point over 0 degrees Aries. The one thing I didn't bring in yet is that Jupiter will move into Cancer next year. Jupiter spends 1 year in each sign. So it's been in Gemini since last summer, summer 2024. It will move into Cancer. When it moves into Cancer on June 10th, it will be also at the Aries point. So it will be triggering that connection to the world right during a full moon on June 10th, 11th. So, and while it's doing it, it will be square Saturn, as Saturn will be in early degrees of Aries. Now, by the time Jupiter and Saturn square, they will be off the Aries point. But I think it can be a good time to pay attention to that full moon in June. That could be another good time to launch something, put something out in the world that you want people to see, to notice, something you want to be successful. I would think that would be a good time. This next summer is a good time for anything that we want to, if we want to make a difference in the world, it's a good time to launch that and then pull back September, October, November, December. All right, I think there's one more slide of here. So this is some of the new full moons going into 2025. All right. All right, so this is the chart of December 6th. I did it for 3:33 p.m. I did it for Portland, Oregon. This is the Mars going retrograde into so this is the chart for the moment that Mars, or closely the time Mars was going retrograde. We'd like to look at this to say, oh, what's this going to be about? We can see that Mars is opposite Pluto in this time. And an Aquarius moon it happened under, which is also makes that auspicious. And even this energy of late degrees, earth, water. Here's Venus, last degree of Capricorn. Here's Uranus, end degrees of Taurus. Now, another thing that's going on is that Uranus at 24 degrees Taurus, it's actually more like 23, 24, 20, yeah, 24 degrees Taurus. There's a star there. It's called Algol, Algol. And Algol is the winking eye of Medusa. This is a point in the sky that's the Greece connected to it being about Medusa. The myth of Medusa is that she turned men to stone. And Perseus, in order to capture Medusa, cut off her head, put it in a bag, and then carried it through space so that she couldn't ever look at him. So this is the myth of the angry feminine, the feminine that has been disempowered. Medusa originally was a powerful goddess that men had to denigrate, had to put down in a way. And so this myth of Medusa is really strong. Uranus is activating it. And so here, Uranus is retrograde, going back over it in early December. And this next chart is February 24th, when Mars goes direct. Uranus is here. It has stationed at 23 degrees Taurus, and it has now moved direct. So that means Uranus over this time period is stationing. And I think as we're looking at Trump's picks for his administration, we're seeing a lot of women. We're seeing particularly women with a certain fierceness to them. We may not agree with who they are ideologically. We may not think that they're using their anger in a positive way, but make no mistake, these are powerful women and they have a lot to say and to do. I think Uranus is asking for a radical and true transformation. So we will see what happens once Uranus gets through this Algol time period. It will then move into the Pleiades, and the Pleiades is much more about the integrative feminine, the part where we are receptive and open and available to love each other. And February 17th, 2026, this is an eclipse. So I was just tuned into this eclipse February 17th, 2026, because there's an eclipse in Aquarius. We move into the nodes are moving back through Pisces. Once they get back into Aquarius, 2026, 2027, then we have eclipses connected to Pluto. That will be the deep turning time period, the kind of the deeper transformational time. All right. Well, I'm going to end this part of the talk here. And this is a basic introduction to what's going on in 2025, a way to think about it. I would take a little bit of time off in March for your creative path, for you to take a time out for some inspiration, because I think it's a very, very magical creative time with a lot of synchronicity. And then when we get to the summer, that's a good time for launching. So launch what you can, put out there what you can. And then when we get to the fall, a little bit of a step back, again, just like we're in right now. Thank you very much.